For years, we've only had a trickling of information for Diablo 4, and that information very much had the still in alpha vibe to it, so not enough to get a real feel for the direction they were planning, much less any direction changes due to technical limitations. But with them announcing that Diablo 4 is slotted for release in 2023, and the announcement of the final core class, the Necromancer, we can sit down and look at what things are looking like so far for the game and its monetization, and where they'll likely end up, as often the home stretch of development is putting all the pieces together and polishing them, not drafting new building blocks. Now, before we dive in, I should note for the sake of completeness, you can sign up to be pre-registered for the beta test for free, and I've included a link to it below, though whether you get in will likely still be a lottery early on, and then they will probably have a pre-purchase access later, just like they did with Resurrected. It's a sadly common industry practice now to goad people into pre-purchasing. It's not just a Blizzard thing. And it's worth noting that most of my comments, both for and against Diablo 4 in this video, are based off of Blizzard's past behavior as a company, and their general trend of conflict between the development interests and the corporate aspects of the company itself. And as a real heavy disclaimer, this is speculation, and even if these things turn out to be how they plan to do this, it could still get muddy if the game is delayed past this release goal, since it seems like there is a push to get most of their in-development games out of the door prior to, or at least around the same time, as the Microsoft acquisition is being finalized, which occurs in 2023 as well, which leaves me mildly suspect to say the least, but we'll just let it go out. Now, if it is delayed, you could see it get pushed back further as the corporate tendencies of Microsoft and its subsidiaries align differently than Blizzard's in recent history, and some adjustments could need to be made to reflect this, but they are less likely to make changes on an already released product. Now, as the title suggests, monetization is the biggest concern and will be the heaviest part of this video, though before we go neck deep into that cesspool, I do want to say that, barring the monetization issues, I think the game will be fine. It looks like it is sitting to be slightly more methodical than Diablo 3, but at the same time, significantly more fast-paced than 1 or 2. This is also favored by their lean into making the game pseudo-open world with casual player interactions through travel, and the introduction of more proper layered systems to keep you invested in your character and build. That said, the favor will likely still be in the offensive playstyles though, judging by the class and skills they have premiered, and we will likely see additional classes in purchasable expansions, much like we saw with the Necromancer in Diablo 3. Though I'm fine with this, and I think it could work interestingly with some of the borrowed mechanics inspired from games outside of the Blizzard sphere. I think the largest drag on gameplay though will be the heavy lean into the games as a service aspect, as well as the always online requirements and the nature of the title, at least as far as they have presented it so far. These do often lead to slightly more predatory design decisions than you find in games intended for solo or mixed play, and this does weigh heavily into what I anticipate the monetization to be like, especially since once the game shuts down the servers, you will no longer be able to play the game you bought. Now, as far as the scope of the world, that remains to be seen, though I am hoping they don't fall into the trap of overly spread out open world design and instead adopt a more easily traversable open world with high interest density, as having to walk 10 or 15 minutes between points of interest is exceptionally dreary, and design decisions most MMOs and open world games get horribly wrong. Now, into the monetization though, which is half of my notes on this, they have not released much in the way of specifics outside of saying that the paid content will be cosmetics and that it won't be possible to purchase power. This has led people to comparing it a lot to Diablo Immortal and its monetization, which they said very similar things about, though we should make clear Diablo Immortal is the NetEase model of monetization, and while the scope was a bit jarring even for them, the exploitative methods and design of it are par for course for that company, not Blizzard, though Blizzard does have its own unique tactics. But basically, I still don't see Diablo 4 utilizing the same monetization method as Immortal unless they are actively and intentionally trying to kill a lucrative franchise for good, which would generally get you in deep trouble with your stockholders and the SEC, especially considering the CEO's tendency towards an IP-focused business model. So I doubt even Bobby would be boneheaded enough to push for an IP kill, though if you've heard some of his quotes from the past 20 years, he could very easily prove me wrong since he's about as out of touch as a dolphin in the Sahara. But back to the subject at hand, what do I think Diablo 4's monetization will look like? On the most hopeful side, I would love it if they were just cosmetics shops and an expansion to buy, and that was it. It would be a refreshing change of pace, but do I think this is the path they will go? Probably not. That's because there's actually a few routes I could see them going that vary depending on just how much they prioritize or deprioritize certain EU markets. If they're willing to sacrifice Belgium and the Netherlands and likely a few other countries in the near future, we may very well see loot boxes filled with piecemealed cosmetics, pets, and boosters. And even if they don't sacrifice these markets, we're likely to see those but geo-locked from markets that ban them. And even if they avoid the loot boxes altogether, we will still likely see these types of things included as single purchases, piecemealed out for a given price or able to be bought as a bundle for some tiny amount less, like 10% off, to make you feel special in your favorite garb. Basically, think something like the premium shop in Sea of Thieves. I would also wager that we will see a battle pass, season pass, or ladder pass of some sort or description. What will be on that is unclear, but it is very likely to exist and focus on exploiting the common target of FOMO, fear of missing out, as well as user convenience. If this is just seasonal cosmetics, maybe a pet, I won't be too chuffed, though part of me is afraid that there will be more in it, and that certain convenience factors will be part of that lockdown for profit, and would be met with backlash too, especially if it was tied to accelerators and open world travel perks. The last monetization method I could see very easily in the game, just them going straight for it, is straight up nabbing a page from games like Path of Exile and Lost Ark, especially with the ever high volume of demand for it in Resurrected. Careful what you ask for and all that. And that is selling storage space or even more, maybe character slots, build save slots, etc. for convenience of collectors, prolific players, and potential pseudo-currency bloat. There are, of course, other monetization methods that could be worked in, but I don't see them making a return to things like the auction house, for example. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if trading is limited in at least some forms to mitigate stuff like D2JSP, or even things like direct or indirect RMT sites, real money trading that is. I also don't see them going for the Rift Crest stuff from Immortal, which is one of the most publicized forms of bad monetization from that title, and one of the most people are acting like will be in Diablo 4 as well, though this one I'm definitely not 100% sure on, since there is still a slim chance of stupid on the forecast, and they could try to grab at it, though if they did that, I wager they would be seeing a deluge of chargebacks and refunds, and I don't think they want that. Obviously, this is just speculation, but that's how I see it happening judging by the state of the industry and how heavily Activision Blizzard's corporate segments lean into these types of trending monetization methods that maximize profits while minimizing service outside of forcing it to be online for whatever excuse they want to use this week, whether it's copyright protection or just quality of service. Though, and I hate that I actually have to say this, I figured people would be mature enough for it, but really big note here. Don't take it out on the developers or even the public-facing workers. They're not the ones making these decisions. They're just doing a job and trying to make the best game they can within the constraints of a bigger machine to make ends meet. While working in an industry most of them want to love, but many will sadly end up resenting.
Goodbye.